Think about the last time you cut open a papaya. That deep orange flesh, almost like a sunset, compressed into a fruit. The soft, yielding texture. The slightly musky, tropical sweetness that does not taste like anything else on earth. Maybe you had it in a fruit salad, or blended into a smoothie, or squeezed with lime on a beach somewhere warm. Or maybe you have never tried one at all, because in many parts of the world, papaya still feels like an exotic, unfamiliar food, something from somewhere far away. And that somewhere far away has a name. It is Brazil. Because Brazil is the largest producer of papaya on the entire planet, growing millions of tons of this fruit every single year from farms that most people have never seen, using farming methods and harvesting systems that are genuinely unlike anything else in tropical agriculture. Today, we are going inside those farms, the science, the machines, the people, and the extraordinary journey from a Brazilian field to a fruit bowl on the other side of the world. Let's go. Brazil produces roughly 3 to 4 million tons of papaya every single year, making it the #1 papaya-producing country in the world, ahead of India, Indonesia, Nigeria, Mexico, and the Dominican Republic. Within Brazil, papaya production is concentrated in two very different regions that together define the entire industry. The first is the state of Bahia in Brazil's northeast, a hot, semi-arid coastal region where the climate is perfect for papaya. Warm year-round, low humidity, and consistent sunshine. The second is the state of Espírito Santo in Brazil's southeast, a more humid region where a different farming model dominates. These two regions together produce the vast majority of Brazil's papaya, and they have developed distinctly different approaches to growing and harvesting the crop that reflect the different landscapes, climates, and farming cultures of their regions. And together, they supply not just Brazil's enormous domestic market, but export markets across Europe, North America, and the Middle East, where Brazilian papaya has carved out a premium position over the past 3 decades. Before we get into how papaya is farmed and harvested in Brazil, you need to understand something about this fruit that most people find genuinely surprising. Papaya is not a tree fruit in the traditional sense. The papaya plant is botanically classified as a large herbaceous plant, meaning its stem is not made of wood the way a mango or orange tree is made of wood. The central trunk of a papaya plant is actually a hollow, soft-fibered stalk, more closely related to a giant herb than to a hardwood tree. This means the papaya plant grows extraordinarily fast, from a seed to a fruit-bearing plant in as little as 6 to 9 months. But it also means the plant is vulnerable to wind, to waterlogging, and to certain diseases in a way that woody-stemmed trees are not. The fruit itself grows directly from the main trunk of the plant, not from branches, which gives a papaya farm its distinctive visual character. Rows of tall, single-stemmed plants, each carrying multiple fruits clustered tightly around the central stalk at different stages of development, from tiny green button fruits at the top to large, fully ripe orange-yellow fruits lower down, all on the same plant at the same time. Papaya in Brazil is grown from seed, and seed selection is taken extremely seriously by commercial growers. The two dominant commercial varieties in Brazil are the Formosa papaya, large, averaging 1 to 2 kilograms per fruit with a deep orange flesh, and the Solo or Hawaii papaya, sometimes called Mamão Hawaiano locally, which is smaller, pear-shaped, and considered the premium variety for export markets. Formosa dominates domestic consumption and the lower-priced commercial market. Solo is the export darling, higher value, more consistent sizing, and better shelf life for long-distance shipping. Seeds are germinated in nursery trays under controlled conditions, and seedlings are transplanted to the field when they are about 30 days old. Before transplanting, the fields are prepared with beds raised above the natural soil level to prevent waterlogging, which is lethal to papaya roots. And drip irrigation lines are laid to deliver precise amounts of water directly to the root zone. Fertilization is intensive. Papaya is a heavy feeder that demands consistent nutrient supply to maintain the continuous fruiting that commercial production requires. From transplanting, the papaya plant begins producing flowers within 3 to 4 months, and the first fruits are ready to harvest in 6 to 9 months. But here is the critical difference between papaya farming and most other fruit crops. A papaya plant does not produce one seasonal harvest and then rest. It produces fruit continuously and simultaneously at multiple stages of development up and down the same trunk for the entire lifespan of the plantation, which typically runs 2 to 3 years in commercial operations. This means harvest is not a seasonal event on a papaya farm. It's a weekly event. Workers move through the same fields every 7 to 10 days, picking the fruits that have reached the precise stage of ripeness required by the market, typically harvested at what is called the 1/4 to 1/2 turning stage, meaning the fruit has just begun to show yellow or orange color breaking through the skin. Harvesting at this exact stage allows the fruit to continue ripening during transport and to arrive at its destination market at perfect eating ripeness. The harvest itself is entirely done by hand, and the physical demands of papaya harvesting are significant. The fruits grow between 4 and 8 feet off the ground on a plant that can reach 15 to 20 feet tall. Workers use long harvest poles with curved metal hooks or basket attachments to cut or snap the fruit from the trunk without damaging it, catching it carefully to avoid bruising the flesh. Papaya bruises very easily, and a bruised papaya deteriorates rapidly, so every single harvest movement is measured and deliberate. Skilled harvest workers develop a rhythm and technique that allows them to move efficiently through the rows without damaging fruit, snapping the stem, catching the papaya, placing it carefully in a padded harvest cart, all in one fluid motion repeated thousands of times a day. In large operations, harvest poles equipped with foam-padded catching baskets have reduced bruise rates significantly, but the work remains physically demanding, performed in tropical heat, and deeply dependent on human skill that machines have not yet been able to replicate. From the harvest carts, papayas are transported to packing houses on the farm, where they go through a washing process, a quality sorting operation by trained graders who examine each fruit individually for size, skin condition, and absence of defects, and then a packing operation, where fruits are carefully placed in padded boxes, single layer, each fruit separated from its neighbors, for transport. Export papayas go through an additional treatment called hot water treatment, where the fruits are submerged in water heated to a precise temperature for a precise amount of time to eliminate any fruit fly larvae or surface pathogens that could cause importing countries to reject the shipment. This phytosanitary treatment is non-negotiable for export markets and adds a critical step to the packing house operation. After hot water treatment, the fruits are packed in refrigerated boxes and loaded into refrigerated containers for the journey to ports in Bahia or Espírito Santo, where they board refrigerated vessels for Europe, the United States, and the Middle East. The people behind Brazil's papaya industry are a mix of large commercial farming operations that employ hundreds of workers and smaller family farms that have built generational expertise in this particular crop in the specific climatic conditions of Bahia and Espírito Santo. In Bahia, the papaya industry has been a driver of economic development in a region historically characterized by poverty and agricultural precarity, bringing stable employment, infrastructure, and international market connections to rural communities. The harvest and packing workforce is overwhelmingly made up of local workers, men and women from surrounding towns who have built their livelihoods around the papaya calendar. The physical and skill demands of harvest and packing work mean that experienced workers are genuinely valued and retain a real negotiating position in the labor market. The families that have built generational expertise in the papaya business in nursery management, irrigation, harvest timing, and export quality standards are the backbone of an industry that now reaches consumers on 6 continents. The challenges facing Brazilian papaya farming are real and growing. The papaya ring spot virus is the single most devastating pathogen the industry faces, a disease spread by aphids that causes characteristic ring-shaped lesions on the fruit and foliage and can destroy entire plantations within a growing season. Managing it requires constant aphid control, strict hygiene protocols, and the use of virus-resistant varieties where available. Water scarcity is an intensifying issue in northeastern Brazil, where the semi-arid climate of Bahia is becoming more unpredictable and more extreme under climate change, threatening the water supply that drip irrigation systems depend on. And price competition from other tropical producing countries, particularly Mexico and the Dominican Republic for the North American market, keeps constant downward pressure on Brazilian export prices that Brazilian growers need to maintain profitability. Despite these pressures, Brazil continues to innovate, developing new disease-resistant varieties through research programs at Embrapa, Brazil's agricultural research corporation, improving cold chain infrastructure to reduce post-harvest losses, and building direct relationships with international retail buyers who value consistency and food safety compliance. The next time you see a papaya at a store or a market, pick it up. Feel the slight give of a ripe one under your thumb. Look at where it came from, because there's a real chance it started its life on a farm in Bahia or Espírito Santo, growing on a plant that produced that single fruit as part of a continuous weekly harvest cycle that never fully stops. Somebody climbed a ladder or reached up with a long pole in the tropical heat to snap it free from the trunk without damaging it. Somebody else placed it in warm water at the precise temperature to clear it for your country's import regulations. And a refrigerated container kept it cool across thousands of miles of ocean so that it could ripen perfectly on your counter and taste, for one sweet moment, like a Brazilian afternoon. That is not just a fruit, that is one of the most carefully managed, most globally connected, and most human-dependent harvest stories in tropical agriculture. And now you know it.